You begin this story not in a palace or a battlefield, but in a street that smells faintly of dust, wet stone and oil. It is early morning in a Roman city. The sun has not fully warmed the paving stones yet, and the air still carries the cool memory of night. Around you the city appears calm, almost ordinary. Yet beneath your feet, behind the walls and above your head, lies a dense network of technology, so quietly reliable that most people no longer think about it at all. Roman technology rarely announced itself. It did not glow, flash, or move quickly. Instead, it waited, it endured, it functioned day after day, without calling attention to its complexity. You might be tempted to imagine Roman innovation as grand machines or secret inventions, but most of what made Roman life possible was slow, heavy, and deeply practical. Consider the road beneath you. Each stone has been carefully set. Below it lie layers of gravel, sand, and compacted earth. This road was not built for beauty. It was built to last decades, sometimes centuries. Soldiers marched on it. Merchants rolled carts over it, and messengers relied on it to move information across vast distances. The road drains rainwater efficiently. It resists frost and heat. It requires little maintenance if constructed properly. You are standing on one of the most successful pieces of engineering in human history, and it feels unremarkable because it works. That is the nature of Roman technology. Its greatest achievement is invisibility. If you turn your attention upward, you notice buildings rising in orderly blocks. Stone, brick, and concrete form walls that feel solid, even after generations. Roman concrete is not the same as modern concrete, yet in many ways it has outperformed it. Mixed with volcanic ash, lime, and seawater in coastal regions, it hardens slowly and continues to strengthen over time. Some Roman harbor structures still stand today, resisting waves that have worn away modern repairs. This was not magic. It was observation, repetition, and patience. The Romans did not invent concrete, but they refined it into a tool of empire. With it they could build arches, domes, vaults, and foundations that supported enormous weight. The arch in particular changed everything. By redistributing pressure, outward and downward, it allowed builders to span wide spaces without solid walls. Bridges, aqueducts, and public halls became possible, on a scale that had never existed before. You walk further and hear water, not rushing wildly but flowing steadily. Somewhere nearby an aqueduct delivers fresh water from distant hills. Gravity alone moves it. There are no pumps, no engines, no moving parts. The channel slopes gently downward, sometimes over dozens of miles, losing only a small amount of height. Too steep, and the water would damage the structure. Too shallow, and it would stagnate. Surveyors measured these gradients with astonishing precision, using simple tools and careful calculation. The water arrives clean enough for drinking, bathing, cooking, and cleaning. It fills fountains, public baths, private homes, and even flushes latrines. For an ordinary Roman citizen, access to running water was not a luxury, but a managed expectation. Maintenance workers known as aquarii inspected channels, removed mineral buildup, repaired cracks, and cleared debris. Their labor was constant and mostly unnoticed. You might think of technology as something used occasionally, but in Rome it shaped every hour of the day. The morning begins with light. Oil lamps are extinguished as daylight enters through carefully positioned windows. Roman architects understood how to orient buildings to capture warmth in winter and shade in summer. Some homes include hypox systems where hot air from a furnace circulates beneath floors and inside walls, providing steady heat. This is not comfort for its own sake. It prevents dampness, illness, and structural decay. The hypocaust requires planning, fuel, and skilled labor. Slaves, or workers, tend fires beneath the floors. Flues guide heat upward. Tiles rest on small pillars, creating space for air to move. It is a system that depends on routine. If neglected, it fails quietly. Cold floors, cracked tiles, and unhealthy air remind inhabitants of the invisible work happening below. Time itself is regulated by technology. Sundials placed in public spaces divide daylight into hours that change length with the seasons. Water clocks measure time indoors, or at night, dripping steadily from one container to another. These devices are imperfect but sufficient. They allow courts to schedule sessions, priests to time rituals, and workers to mark shifts. Life becomes structured, not by instinct alone, but by measured intervals. Writing materials also matter. Wax tablets, wooden frames filled with dark wax, allow notes to be written, erased, and rewritten. Papyrus imported from Egypt carries contracts, letters, and records across the empire. Ink made from soot and plant resin stains pages permanently. Literacy is not universal, but documentation is everywhere. Bureaucracy itself becomes a form of technology organizing people, resources, and memory. Even food depends on engineered systems. Grain arrives from distant provinces stored in massive warehouses. Mills powered by animals' water, or human labor, grind flour daily. In some cities, watermills line rivers, turning continuously converting flow into sustenance. Bread ovens operate on schedules regulated by law to ensure fair distribution. The population trusts that bread will appear each day not because of faith but because systems support it. Waste removal is equally organized. Sewers carry wastewater away from streets. Latrines are flushed by running water. Garbage is collected, reused, or dumped in designated areas. Broken pottery becomes construction fill. Organic waste feeds animals or fertilizes fields. This is not cleanliness as modern people understand it, but it is order. Disease still spreads, but infrastructure reduces chaos. Transportation technologies extend beyond roads. River barges move heavy loads more efficiently than carts. Harbor cranes powered by treadwheels lift stone cargo. Winches, pulleys, and counterweights multiply human strength. A small group of workers can raise columns that would otherwise be immovable. These machines are built from wood, rope, and iron, yet they reflect deep understanding of physics, even without formal theory. None of this technology belongs to a single inventor. It emerges from collective effort across centuries. Innovations are copied, adapted, and standardized. Manuals are written, measurements are regulated. When something works, it spreads. When it fails, it is quietly abandoned. You might notice that many Roman technologies favor durability over novelty. There is little interest in rapid change. Stability supports empire. A road that lasts 100 years matters more than one that is faster to build but weaker. A water channel that rarely fails matters more than a complex device that demands constant repair. And yet, this reliance on proven systems creates a kind of fragility. When maintenance stops, when funding disappears, when skilled workers vanish, the systems do not collapse dramatically. They simply slow, degrade, and clog. Water stops flowing, floors grow cold, roads crack, weeds grow between stones. As you stand again in that quiet street, you realize how much of Roman life depends on continued attention to these hidden technologies. Most citizens do not understand how the aqueduct works, or how concrete cures, or how roads drain. They only know that yesterday everything functioned, and today it still does. But what happens when the people who remember how to maintain these systems are gone, or when the state can no longer support the quiet labor that keeps technology alive? And could an empire built on routine endure once that routine began to slip? You continue walking through the Roman city, now more aware of how much effort hides behind what appears ordinary. The street has grown busier. Shopkeepers lift wooden shutters. A baker tends an oven that has already been warm for hours. None of this happens by accident. It happens because systems built long ago still hold together. Roman technology was not only about construction and machines, it was about organization. The empire functioned because thousands of small technical routines were followed every day by people who rarely appear in historical accounts. Engineers receive attention, but surveyors, inspectors, clerks, furnace keepers, and maintenance crews carried the true burden of continuity. Take the aqueduct again, not as a monument, but as a workplace. You imagine walking alongside it, beyond the city walls. The channel is covered in some sections, open in others. Workers check for cracks, caused by shifting soil or plant roots. Mineral deposits form slowly along the interior, narrowing the flow. These must be scraped away. This is tedious labor done repeatedly with little reward. Yet, without it, water pressure drops and fountains fail. The Romans understood that technology without maintenance is temporary. Laws define responsibility for repairs. Landowners must protect aqueducts crossing their property. Penalties exist for damage or theft of materials. Records are kept listing water allocations to baths, fountains, and private homes. Even water becomes a regulated resource measured in units flowing through calibrated pipes. Metal pipes themselves are a technological compromise. Lead is easy to shape and seal. It is widely used despite health risks that are not fully understood. Some water flows through clay pipes instead. The system works well enough to support dense populations. Risk is tolerated because benefit is immediate. In the city center, you enter a public bath complex. It is massive but carefully planned. Separate rooms manage temperature progression from cold to warm to hot. Furnaces burn wood continuously. Ash is removed daily. Floors must remain intact to allow heat circulation. Walls channel warm air upward. Water arrives fresh and exits through drains. The bath is not only a place to wash, it is a social institution supported by technology, logistics, and constant fuel supply. Fuel itself reveals another layer of organization. Wood must be harvested, transported, stored, and rationed. Forests near cities are managed. Overuse leads to shortages requiring longer supply routes. Charcoal production becomes essential for metalworking and heating. Each step depends on tools, measurements, and labor coordination. Metal technology supports daily life. Quietly, iron nails hold roofs together. Hinges allow doors to move smoothly. Locks secure storage chests. Tools are standardized enough that replacement parts can be made without starting from scratch. Blacksmiths rely on bellows, anvils, and controlled heat rather than guesswork. Their skill is learned through apprenticeship, not formal schooling. The same applies to construction crews. Builders understand load distribution by experience. They know how thick a wall must be, how wide a foundation should spread. Mistakes collapse structures slowly or suddenly. Lessons are remembered and shared orally. There is no single manual for Roman engineering, but there is a culture of repetition. Transportation networks reveal the empire's dependence on predictability. Roads are marked with milestones indicating distance. Travelers know how far they have gone, and how far remains. Inns appear at regular intervals. State messengers change horses at relay stations. This allows information to travel faster than most people ever will. The speed of communication shapes governance. Orders reach distant provinces in days rather than weeks. Tax schedules are enforced. Military units receive instructions before crises grow unmanageable. None of this requires advanced machines, only maintained roads, trained riders, and accurate record keeping. Writing and record storage become technologies of control. Archives store census data, property records, military rosters, and legal decisions. Clerks copy documents carefully. Errors matter. A misplaced name or number affects taxation, land ownership, or legal status. Literacy becomes a professional skill rather than a general one. Those who can read and write hold quiet power. Measurement standards unify the empire. Weights, lengths, and volumes are regulated. Scales are inspected. Fraud is punished. Trade depends on trust, enforced by law and tools. Markets function because buyers and sellers agree on what a unit means. In workshops, artisans produce goods in large quantities. Pottery, oil lamps, glassware, and tools are made, using molds and repetitive processes. This is not mass production in the modern sense, but it approaches it. Uniformity allows easier replacement and trade. Broken items can be swapped rather than repaired individually. You begin to notice how little individuality exists in these systems. Roman technology favors sameness. Roads look similar from Britain to Syria. Aqueducts follow familiar patterns. Buildings share proportions. This consistency allows knowledge to travel with people. A builder trained in one province can work in another with minimal adjustment. Yet, this strength also limits adaptation. When circumstances change, technology struggles to respond quickly. If a city grows beyond its water capacity, new aqueducts take decades to plan and build. If fuel sources deplete, alternatives are slow to adopt. Innovation occurs but cautiously. The empire depends on surplus. Grain shipments must arrive on time. Taxes must be collected. Labor must remain available. Slavery and coerced labor underpin much of this technological stability. Mines, quarries, and construction sites consume lives quietly. Tools are efficient, but bodies are expendable. In rural areas, technology feels different. Farms rely on plows, presses, and irrigation channels. Olive oil and wine production depend on mechanical presses using screws, levers, and weights. These devices extract more yield with less effort. They are simple but effective. Rural life becomes tied to seasonal rhythms, guided by tools rather than chance alone. Even the military reflects technological discipline. Forts are built to standardized layouts. Camps include drainage systems, latrines, storage, and roads laid out in grids. Soldiers become builders, engineers, and surveyors. When a legion moves, it carries knowledge of construction wherever it goes. But all of this requires a stable authority. Taxes fund maintenance. Laws enforce standards. Skilled labor must be trained continuously. When political unrest interrupts these processes, cracks begin to appear. Not immediately but slowly. A road unrepaired becomes uneven. A drain clogged floods a basement. A furnace neglected cools a bathhouse. None of these events signal collapse. They signal delay, inconvenience, and adaptation. People find workarounds. Wells replace fountains, fires heat rooms, paths form beside broken roads. As you listen to the quiet rhythm of Roman technology, you realize that its power lies not in spectacle but in persistence. It assumes tomorrow will resemble today closely enough that planning makes sense. But what happens when tomorrow becomes uncertain? When maintenance budgets shrink, when trained workers disappear, and when the empire can no longer guarantee that its carefully balanced systems will be tended with the same patience they once received. You remain in the city, but something subtle has shifted. The streets are still paved, the aqueduct still flows, the baths still open their doors. Yet there is a sense of strain beneath the routine. Roman technology does not fail loudly. It fades through neglect, delay, and improvisation. To understand its final stage, you must look not at collapse but at endurance under pressure. As the empire expands, systems stretch. New provinces bring new roads, water channels, and cities that demand maintenance. Skilled workers must be trained continuously. Taxes must increase or be collected more efficiently. When political stability weakens, technology becomes vulnerable, not because it is flawed but because it depends on organization. You walk toward the edge of the city where the aqueduct enters through an arch. The stone remains solid, but nearby you notice patches of repair using mismatched materials. Brick replaces stone, mortar is thinner. This is not decay yet, it is adaptation. Local officials do what they can with what they have. The goal is not perfection but function. Inside the city, fountains still run, but some no longer flow all day. Water is redirected to essential uses. Public baths shorten hours. Private connections are reduced. Water allocation records grow outdated. Inspectors visit less often. None of this is dramatic. Most people adjust without complaint. Technology begins to fragment along regional lines. In wealthier areas, roads are maintained and buildings repaired. In poorer regions, older structures are reused rather than rebuilt. A temple becomes a warehouse. A bathhouse becomes housing. Hypercaust systems are abandoned because fuel costs too much. Floors are filled in. Fires are lit in rooms instead. You begin to see that Roman technology was never only about materials. It was about trust. People trusted that systems would be maintained tomorrow. When that trust weakens, behavior changes. Families store water. Merchants choose safer routes, even if longer. Builders simplify designs to reduce risk. In rural areas, technology persists longer in simpler forms. A stone press continues to extract oil. A wooden plow remains effective. These tools require little central coordination. They survive because they are local and repairable. Complex systems dependent on distant authority suffer first. The military once served as a carrier of technological knowledge. As legions withdraw or are reassigned, forts lose maintenance. Roads used primarily by soldiers deteriorate faster. Without regular traffic and repair, they become paths rather than highways. Bridges lose parapets. Drainage fails. Vegetation returns quietly. Written records continue but become less precise. Census data grows outdated. Tax rolls shrink. Archives are neglected. Literacy remains among elites but clerical positions disappear in some regions. Oral agreements replace written contracts. Memory substitutes for documentation. You notice changes in building style. New construction uses smaller stones, irregular shapes, and less mortar. Builders prioritize speed and reuse. Columns are scavenged from older structures. Roof tiles are patched. The goal is shelter rather than monumentality. This is not ignorance. It is realism. Skilled builders still exist, but the incentive to build for centuries fades when the future feels uncertain. Technology adjusts to expectations. When long-term stability disappears, short-term solutions dominate. Yet, many Roman technologies never fully vanish. Roads continue to guide movement even when broken. Aqueduct channels become footpaths. Sewers become drainage ditches. Concrete foundations support new buildings centuries later. Knowledge lingers in material form, even when written understanding is lost. In some regions, technology blends with local traditions. Roman water management combines with older irrigation methods. Heating systems simplify, measurement standards drift but do not disappear. The empire fragments, but habits remain. You realize that technological decline is not a single moment. It is a process shaped by choices, constraints, and priorities. People do not wake up deciding to abandon engineering. They respond to conditions. They conserve energy resources and attention. Centuries later, travelers will still walk on Roman roads without knowing who laid them. Medieval builders will reuse Roman stone. Renaissance engineers will study ancient ruins and rediscover principles thought lost. Roman technology does not end. It transforms into background. The lesson is quiet. Technology thrives when supported by stable institutions, but it can outlive them in fragments. It does not require admiration to persist, only use. What matters most is not innovation, but care. As you step back and imagine the Roman world at dusk, lamps lit roads fading into shadow, you understand that its greatest technological achievement was not any single invention. It was the creation of systems so dependable that people forgot they were inventions at all. And as you consider modern life built on equally invisible systems, you may wonder whether the technologies you rely on today are being maintained with the same patience, and whether future generations will walk among their remains without knowing how carefully they once worked. You begin this story not by standing still but by moving forward, one slow step at a time. Beneath your feet is a Roman road. It feels firm and slightly uneven, built from stone blocks worn smooth by centuries of travel. The road does not hurry you. It does not invite speed. It simply exists, extending in a straight line toward the horizon, asking only that you continue. Roman roads were not designed for comfort. They were designed for certainty. When a Roman road was built, it declared that movement would be possible here tomorrow, next year, and long after the builders themselves were gone. This promise of continuity shaped the empire as deeply as any law or army. You notice how the road is raised slightly above the surrounding land. This is deliberate. Rainwater runs off into shallow ditches on either side, preventing flooding and erosion. Layers beneath the surface include large foundation stones, compacted gravel, and a final paved layer. Each layer serves a purpose. Remove one, and the road weakens. The Romans did not invent roads, but they perfected the idea of roads as permanent infrastructure rather than temporary paths. Earlier cultures followed terrain. Roman engineers reshaped it. Hills were cut through, valleys were bridged, marshes were drained or crossed on causeways. The shortest route mattered more than the easiest. As you walk, you see a cylindrical stone standing at the edge of the road. It is a mile marker. Carved into its surface are inscriptions naming an emperor and listing distances to nearby towns. This stone is both practical and symbolic. It tells travelers where they are and reminds them who made this journey possible. Distances are measured consistently across the empire. A Roman mile is standardized. Travelers can calculate travel time, supply needs, and rest stops. Merchants plan deliveries. Officials estimate arrival dates. The road turns geography into something predictable. Roman roads connect cities, forts, ports, and villages. They bind distant regions into a single logistical system. Grain moves inland. Troops move outward. Messages travel faster than rumors. This connectivity allows authority to reach places that would otherwise drift beyond control. You imagine a messenger on horseback approaching. He carries a leather pouch sealed with wax. At relay stations along the road, he changes horses and continues. The road supports this speed by remaining passable in all seasons. Mud is minimized. Stones remain aligned. Even in rain, the messenger rides on. Maintenance is constant. Local communities are responsible for sections of road. Soldiers repair roads near forts. Slaves and hired laborers clear debris, reset stones, and maintain drainage. These workers do not build monuments. They preserve function. You pass a roadside inn, a simple structure offering water, shelter, and basic food. Inns appear at regular intervals. Their placement reflects an understanding of daily travel limits. Most travelers move on foot or by cart. Animals tire. People need rest. The road supports human rhythm. Not all roads look identical. In cities they are wide and paved. In rural areas they narrow and use gravel. Near borders, they are reinforced for military use. Yet they all follow the same principles: straightness, durability, drainage. The road influences settlement patterns. Villages grow where roads intersect. Markets form at crossroads. Warehouses appear near junctions. Over time, the road shapes economic life without ever demanding attention. You realize that Roman roads are not just physical structures. They are agreements. Agreements that travelers will behave predictably, that distances will remain stable, that tomorrow the road will still be there. Even law enforcement depends on roads. Officials travel to hear cases. Taxes are transported securely. Criminals are moved between cities. Justice becomes mobile. As centuries pass, the empire changes, but the roads remain. Even when maintenance declines, the foundations endure. Dirt paths form along broken stones. Medieval travelers follow Roman routes without knowing their origin. The road continues to guide movement, long after its builders are forgotten. You pause and look back along the road behind you. It disappears into distance, marked occasionally by worn stones and faint inscriptions. Ahead, it continues straight, indifferent to politics and time. And you begin to wonder how something so quiet and ordinary managed to shape an empire, and what it meant for people who lived their entire lives within reach of a road that promised connection, but also carried the weight of authority toward them. You continue along the road, and as the hours pass, you begin to sense how deeply it governs life beyond simple travel. The road does not only carry people, it carries expectations. Those who live near it understand that movement is constant and unavoidable. Soldiers may arrive, tax collectors may appear, merchants may stop, news always comes from somewhere else. Road construction itself reveals Roman priorities. Before a single stone is laid, surveyors walk the land using measuring rods and sighting tools. They mark the straightest possible line between destinations. If a hill stands in the way, it is cut. If a forest blocks progress, it is cleared. The land is expected to adapt to the road, not the other way around. This approach requires authority. Villages lose farmland. Property lines are redrawn. Labor is demanded. Compensation may be offered, but resistance rarely succeeds. The road is a public good enforced by state power. Once completed, however, it benefits even those who opposed it. Travel becomes easier, trade increases, isolation diminishes. Mile markers grow more frequent as you approach populated regions. Each one quietly reinforces order. Distances are no longer guessed, they are declared. The inscriptions list emperors not to boast, but to anchor time. Travelers know when repairs were made, and under whose authority the road becomes a timeline carved in stone. You imagine a farmer walking beside the road, driving animals toward market. He knows how far he must travel, and how long it will take. He plans his day accordingly. This predictability reduces risk. Food arrives fresher, prices stabilize. Small efficiencies accumulate over generations. Reputations accumulate over generations. Military use remains central. Legions march at regulated pace. Camps are built one day's march apart. Roads allow rapid redeployment. A rebellion in one province can be met by troops from another before it spreads. The road compresses space. Distance loses its protective power. Yet for civilians, the same road carries opportunity. Artisans move to growing towns. Seasonal workers travel for harvest. Families migrate. Marriage networks expand. Cultural habits spread quietly. Accents soften. Clothing styles change. Ideas travel without ceremony. Roadside shrines appear at intervals. Travelers pause to make offerings. Gods of boundaries and journeys receive attention. These shrines serve both spiritual and practical functions. They mark resting points. They offer landmarks. Faith and navigation blend naturally. The road also enforces surveillance. Officials travel more easily. Inspections increase. Laws reach farther. Escape becomes harder. A criminal fleeing along the road leaves traces and meets witnesses. The same infrastructure that enables trade enables control. You notice how inns vary in quality. Some are well kept, others barely functional. Their condition reflects local prosperity. A thriving road supports services. A neglected one reveals declining traffic. Roads become indicators of regional health. As time passes and central authority weakens, maintenance becomes irregular. Some sections remain solid, others crumble. Local communities patch what they can. Stones are reused for walls or homes. The road narrows as people avoid broken areas. Still, the route remains. Mile markers lose inscriptions to erosion. Names fade. Distances remain implied rather than read. Travelers rely on memory and habit. The road becomes tradition rather than policy. Yet even in decline, the road shapes choices. New paths rarely replace it entirely. Travelers prefer the old alignment. Towns remain clustered along it. Even when forgotten, the road guides movement, like a buried memory. You realize that Roman roads succeeded not because they were indestructible, but because they were useful long after their original purpose shifted. They adapted by being simple. Stone, gravel, and drainage outlast political intention. As evening approaches, shadows stretch across the pavement. The road cools. You imagine countless feet that have walked here without recording their names. Soldiers, farmers, traders, messengers, children, none thought of themselves as participants in a grand system. They were simply going somewhere. And you begin to wonder how much of daily life depends on paths laid down by distant authority, and whether those paths still guide behavior, even when the power that built them has faded. You walk more slowly now. The road has carried you far enough that its presence feels less like an object and more like a condition. It is simply there, shaping your movement without demanding thought. This is where the true legacy of Roman roads becomes clear, not in their construction but in how they continue to influence life long after their builders are gone. As imperial authority weakens, the road does not disappear. It waits. Local people adapt to it. Farmers use its stones to reinforce walls or barns, but rarely remove enough to destroy the route entirely. Wagons still roll where the foundation remains firm. Where stones are missing, dirt paths form directly beside them. The road widens rather than vanishes. In many regions, medieval kingdoms inherit these routes without fully understanding how they were built. They lack the resources or organization to replicate them at scale, yet they recognize their value. Trade routes follow Roman alignments. Pilgrims walk them, armies march along them again, centuries after the last legion passed. Mile markers lose their original meaning, but their presence continues to mark distance. Some are reused as boundary stones. Others become landmarks with local names. A traveler might say turn at the old stone without knowing it once declared imperial order. Cities that thrived because of roads continue to matter. Their markets persist. Their crossroads remain busy. Even when populations shrink, the road keeps them connected to wider networks. Geography shaped by Rome remains geography, lived by others. You realize that Roman roads trained people to expect connection. Once movement becomes predictable, isolation feels unnatural. Communities measure themselves by distance traveled rather than distance endured. This habit survives empires. In modern times, many highways still follow Roman routes. Engineers choose them not out of nostalgia, but practicality. The Romans chose well. Their surveyors understood terrain in ways that still make sense. Straight lines still connect logical destinations. The road teaches a quiet lesson. Infrastructure shapes behavior more deeply than laws or rulers. A road does not argue. It simply offers a way forward, and people follow. As night falls, the stones beneath your feet hold the day's warmth. You imagine travelers long gone, resting nearby, trusting that tomorrow the road would still carry them where they needed to go. And you are left with a simple reflection. When you move through the world today, how many of your choices follow paths laid down by people you will never know? And how much of what feels natural is actually inherited direction quietly guiding you onward? You begin this story not by looking at stone arches stretching across valleys, but by listening. Somewhere nearby, water moves. Not loudly, not with urgency, but with steady persistence. This sound is constant in a Roman city, even when you cannot see its source. It flows beneath streets, behind walls, and through channels built so carefully that most people forget they exist at all. Water is the quiet foundation of Roman life. Without it, baths would close, fountains would dry, latrines would clog, workshops would stall, and disease would spread faster than order could contain it. The Roman achievement was not merely bringing water to cities, it was sustaining that flow day after day, year after year, across generations. You imagine standing outside the city walls, where the aqueduct begins to rise. Here, the channel is narrow and plain, often covered to protect it from debris and tampering. It carries water from distant hills and springs, chosen not for beauty but for reliability. Roman surveyors walked these landscapes carefully, tasting water, observing seasonal changes, and measuring gradients with remarkable patience. The aqueduct relies on gravity alone. There are no pumps, no engines, no sudden drops. The slope is so gentle that you might not notice it at all. Too steep, and the water would erode the channel. Too shallow, and it would stagnate. The margin for error is small, yet the system works across distances that can stretch for dozens of miles. Most people never see the full length of an aqueduct. They see only the arches near cities, rising high enough to cross valleys or roads. These arches impress visitors, but they represent only a small portion of the structure. Most of the channel runs underground or at ground level, hidden and protected. This invisibility reflects the Roman attitude toward water management. Aqueducts are not decorative. They are functional. Their purpose is to deliver water reliably, not to inspire awe. Awe comes later, when people realize how long they have depended on something they barely noticed. You follow the channel inward toward the city. At intervals, inspection shafts allow workers to enter and clean the interior. Mineral deposits slowly build up along the walls, narrowing the passage. Left unchecked, they reduce flow. Aqueduct keepers scrape them away by hand, working in confined spaces with limited light. This labor is repetitive and physically demanding. It is also essential. These workers are rarely named in historical records. They are slaves, freedmen, or hired laborers. Some specialize in masonry, others in cleaning or repair. Their knowledge is practical, learned through experience rather than formal training. They know how water behaves in different seasons. They recognize early signs of cracks or leaks. They understand which repairs can wait and which cannot. Water enters the city through distribution tanks, large basins where flow is slowed and divided. From here, pipes carry water to fountains, baths, latrines, and private homes. Allocation is regulated. Public needs come first. Private connections require permission and payment. Inspectors monitor usage, at least in theory. Lead pipes are common. They are easy to shape and join. Clay pipes are used as well. The health risks of lead are not fully understood, but the immediate benefits outweigh distant concerns. Water flows where people need it. Fountains are more than decoration. They are access points for those without private connections. People gather here daily, filling containers, talking quietly, waiting their turn. The steady flow reassures them that the city still functions. When a fountain slows or stops, concern spreads quickly. Public baths depend entirely on water management. They consume enormous quantities. Pools must be filled, emptied, and cleaned. Hot and cold supplies must be maintained. Without constant flow, baths become stagnant and unhealthy. Aqueduct keepers know this. They prioritize bath complexes because their closure affects public morale. Latrines also rely on flowing water. Waste is carried away through channels connected to sewers. This does not eliminate disease, but it reduces accumulation. The system depends on continuous movement. Standing water invites problems. You realize that Roman water technology is not just about abundance, it is about circulation. Water must move. It must arrive, be used and depart. Every interruption creates consequences. Stagnation is the enemy. The administration of water is complex. Records track who receives how much. Illegal tapping of pipes is common. Some people drill small holes to divert water for private use. Inspectors search for these thefts, listening for unusual sounds, checking pressure changes. Enforcement is uneven, but the effort exists. Water law becomes a specialized field. Regulations define rights and responsibilities. Damage to aqueducts carries penalties. Landowners must allow access for repairs. These rules acknowledge a simple truth. Water systems only work if everyone accepts limits. In times of drought, priorities shift. Some fountains are shut down. Bath hours are reduced. Private supplies are restricted. These decisions are made quietly to avoid unrest. Water scarcity tests the system and the people who maintain it. You stand now beneath one of the arches where the aqueduct crosses open ground. Above you, water flows silently inside its channel. Below you, people pass without looking up. They trust that the water will arrive as it always has. That trust is the aqueduct's greatest achievement. It allows people to plan their days, their work, their health, without thinking about where water comes from. It turns survival into routine. But you begin to sense how fragile this routine might be. What happens if inspections become less frequent? If skilled workers leave? If repairs are delayed, not for days but for years? And if the quiet discipline that keeps water flowing begins to weaken? You stay close to the water as it moves deeper into the city, and you begin to notice how carefully its path is controlled. The aqueduct does not simply pour water into streets and homes. It pauses, divides, and waits. Roman water management is deliberate, shaped by rules that reflect both technical understanding and social order. At the main distribution tanks, known as castellum structures, water enters a calm basin. Sediment settles here. Pressure slows. From this point, channels branch outward like veins. Each outlet is measured. The size of an opening determines how much water flows through it. This is not guesswork. It is regulation carved into stone. Public fountains receive priority. They must flow consistently, so that citizens without private access can collect water daily. These fountains are inspected regularly, because a dry fountain creates anxiety quickly. People rely on it not only for drinking, but for cooking, washing, and basic hygiene. When water stops, routines collapse. Private connections exist but are limited. Wealthier households may receive water directly through pipes, but this privilege comes with fees and legal obligations. The pipe diameter is specified. Any unauthorized widening is illegal. Inspectors known as water officials walk the system listening, tapping, and checking flow rates. Their work is quiet but constant. The temptation to steal water never disappears. Small holes drilled into pipes divert flow gradually. Over time, these thefts reduce pressure elsewhere. Fountains weaken, baths struggle to fill pools. When problems appear, aqueduct keepers trace them backward. Repairs often reveal deliberate damage. This creates tension. Water is essential, and enforcement feels personal. Punishments range from fines to confiscation of property, yet officials understand that strict enforcement can cause unrest. Balance matters. Technology operates within human limits. Seasonal changes test the system further. Heavy rains increase debris, dry summers reduce spring output. In winter, freezing threatens exposed sections. Aqueduct keepers adjust flow, redirect water, and reinforce vulnerable points. Their knowledge is experiential. They remember past failures and respond before they repeat. You imagine one of these workers entering an inspection shaft, lowering himself into darkness with a lamp. The channel is narrow. The air is damp. Mineral buildup crunches underfoot. He scrapes slowly, knowing that missing a section could reduce flow for an entire neighborhood. This work is invisible but vital. Inside the city, water shapes architecture. Houses are built around access points. Workshops that need water cluster near reliable supply. Dyers, tanners, and fullers depend on constant flow. When water falters, their livelihoods suffer first. Public baths feel the strain immediately. Reduced water means lower temperatures, dirtier pools, and shorter hours. Bath attendants compensate by cleaning more often, reusing water carefully, and limiting access. The bath remains open if possible, because closure signals deeper trouble. Sewers depend on water movement as well. Without enough flow, waste accumulates. Odors increase. Blockages form. Aqueduct keepers coordinate with sewer workers to ensure enough water passes through flushing channels. This coordination is informal, but practiced. As political authority weakens in some regions, funding for maintenance declines. Inspections become less frequent. Skilled workers leave for other employment or safer areas. Repairs are delayed. Minor cracks widen slowly. Water loss increases gradually. The system does not collapse immediately. Redundancy exists. Many cities have multiple aqueducts. If one weakens, others compensate. Wells supplement supply. Systems collect rainwater. People adapt quietly. Over time, however, adaptations become permanent. Baths close sections. Fountains operate intermittently. Private connections are cut. The city grows accustomed to less water. Expectations adjust downward. You notice how water scarcity changes behavior. People carry water more carefully. They store it. They clean less often. Industries shrink or relocate. The city remains alive but altered. Aqueduct keepers continue their work as long as possible. They prioritize essential routes. They abandon less critical branches. Their discipline shifts from expansion to preservation. And as you listen again to the sound of water flowing somewhere beneath stone, you begin to wonder how long a system built on routine can survive when that routine is slowly interrupted, and whether water management can endure without the authority and resources that once sustained it. You stay with the water as time moves forward, not quickly, but gradually, in the same way the system itself changes. The aqueduct still stands. The channel still carries water, but the certainty that once surrounded it has softened. What was once routine now requires effort and improvisation. As central authority weakens, the discipline that governed water management becomes uneven. In some cities, local officials take responsibility seriously. They continue inspections. They collect fees. They organize repairs. In others, attention drifts elsewhere. War, taxation, and political instability draw resources away from maintenance. Water systems are not abandoned by decision, but by distraction. You walk along an aqueduct outside the city and notice vegetation growing closer to the stone. Roots press into mortar. Small leaks darken the surface. None of this looks dramatic, but water escaping here will not reach the city. Loss accumulates slowly. Inside the city, distribution tanks still divide flow, but sediment builds faster now. Cleaning happens less often. Pipes corrode, pressure drops. Fountains that once flowed continuously now slow at certain hours. People adjust their routines, they arrive earlier, they wait longer, they complain quietly. Public baths feel the change deeply. Water temperatures fluctuate, pools are drained less frequently. Some rooms close entirely, the hypocaust furnaces still burn, but without sufficient water their purpose fades. Baths that once served thousands now serve hundreds. Eventually some close for good. Aqueduct keepers continue their work, but their numbers shrink. Knowledge passes unevenly. Experienced workers train fewer apprentices. Techniques are remembered in fragments. Repairs become simpler. Temporary fixes replace careful restoration. In many places, wells return to prominence. Cisterns are repaired. Rainwater collection becomes essential. These older methods had never disappeared entirely. They had simply been overshadowed by abundance. Now they fill the gaps. The aqueduct itself becomes a resource. Stone is reused. Channels are repurposed as walkways or boundaries. Sections collapse and are left unrepaired. Others remain intact for centuries because they are still useful. In rural areas, small-scale water management survives more easily. Simple channels, irrigation ditches, and local springs require less coordination. They endure because they are close to those who need them. Over generations, memory of how aqueducts were built fades. People know that water once flowed more freely. They know the arches were important, but the precise discipline behind them becomes unclear. The system becomes a relic rather than a routine. Centuries later, travelers admire the remains. Scholars study them. Engineers rediscover principles long forgotten. The aqueduct teaches again, not by functioning, but by existing. You stand beneath an arch that still rises above the land. Water no longer flows overhead, but the structure remains. It speaks of patience, planning, and care repeated over generations. The lesson is quiet and lasting. Technology does not disappear when empires fall. It fades when maintenance ends. What survives is what people continue to use, adapt, and remember. And as you consider the systems that bring water to you today, hidden behind walls and beneath streets, you may find yourself wondering whether the same quiet discipline is still being practiced, and how long any system can endure once people stop noticing the work that keeps it alive. You begin this story before sunrise, when the city is still quiet and the streets smell faintly of ash and damp stone. Somewhere nearby, an oven is already warm. The baker has been awake for hours. Bread does not appear suddenly in a Roman city. It arrives through a long chain of ordinary actions repeated every day without pause. Food is the most demanding technology of all. Roads, aqueducts, and buildings can wait a day for repair. Hunger cannot. The Roman Empire survives not only through armies and laws, but through its ability to move grain steadily from distant fields into the mouths of millions of people. You imagine standing near a river port, where ships arrive heavy with grain sacks. The grain has traveled far, from North Africa, Sicily, or Egypt. It crossed fields, roads, and sea routes. Each stage required coordination. Farmers harvested at the right time. Officials assessed quotas. Ships waited for favorable winds. Delays meant spoilage, shortages, or unrest. Grain is measured carefully. Standard containers and weights ensure consistency. Disputes are common. Inspectors oversee unloading. Records are kept. Mistakes matter. A shortfall of grain does not remain abstract. It appears as thinner loaves, longer lines, and rising tension. Warehouses stand near ports and along major roads. They are large plain structures designed to keep grain dry and protected from pests. Floors are raised. Ventilation allows air to circulate. Guards prevent theft. Grain may sit here for months before moving again. During that time it must remain usable. You walk inside one of these warehouses. The smell is dry and earthy. Sacks are stacked carefully. Workers inspect for moisture and insects. Spoiled grain is separated and discarded, or fed to animals. Loss is expected but must be limited. Efficiency here determines survival elsewhere. From the warehouse, grain moves to mills. In some places, animals turn millstones slowly and steadily. In others, watermills harness river flow to grind continuously. These watermills represent one of the most important but least celebrated Roman technologies. They convert natural motion into daily food without rest. A watermill operates day and night as long as water flows. Gears made of wood transmit force. Stones grind grain into flour. Maintenance is constant. Stones must be dressed. Gears replaced, channels cleared. Mill workers listen closely to the sound of grinding. A change in rhythm signals trouble. Flour is then transported to bakeries. Some are private, others serve the public distribution system. In large cities, especially Rome itself, the state plays a direct role in feeding the population. Grain rations are issued to eligible citizens. This is not generosity, it is stability. You stand near a distribution point. As people gather quietly, each person presents proof of entitlement. Officials measure out grain carefully. Arguments occur. Tempers rise. Hunger makes people impatient. The process must appear fair. Perception matters as much as quantity. Bread baking itself is regulated. Ovens must meet standards. Bakers are inspected. Prices are controlled. Short waits are punished. The baker's craft is technical and repetitive. Dough consistency depends on flour quality, water temperature, and timing. Experience matters more than creativity. Bread in a Roman city is simple, dense and filling. It provides calories rather than pleasure. Yet it anchors daily life. People plan their day around meals. Work breaks follow bread distribution schedules. Children learn the rhythm early. Food technology extends beyond grain. Olive oil, wine, and salted fish rely on presses, fermentation, and preservation methods. But grain remains central. Without it, everything else becomes secondary. The Roman state understands this. Grain supply becomes a political responsibility. Emperors are judged by whether the city is fed. Riots erupt when shipments fail. Calm returns when bread appears. Transportation networks serve food first. Ships carrying grain receive priority. Roads are cleared for supply carts. Military escorts protect shipments. Feeding the city outranks almost everything else. In rural areas, farmers live closer to the source but still depend on tools. Plows, mills, presses, and storage pits shape their year. Harvest is labor-intensive. Failure means hunger. Success means taxes. You realize that feeding an empire is not about abundance alone. It is about timing, trust, and repetition. Everyone involved expects the system to work because it worked yesterday. But as you watch workers sweep flour from the mill floor and bakers load loaves into ovens, you begin to sense how fragile this routine might be. What happens when shipments are delayed, when mills fall silent, or when the quiet systems that turn grain into daily survival begin to falter? You stay near the heart of the city, where the smell of baking bread lingers in the air, and begin to notice the subtle network of systems that sustain it. Grain does not magically transform into bread. It passes through a complex chain of labor, tools, and organization that requires attention every single day. Each link in this chain is as vital as the next, and any disruption can ripple through the city quietly but dramatically. The first link is collection. Farmers across the provinces harvest crops according to seasonal rhythms. Timing is crucial. Too early, and grain may be underdeveloped and light. Too late, and rain and pests can ruin the harvest. Workers thresh, winnow, and bag the grain. Simple tools, flails, sieves, baskets, become instruments of survival when used efficiently. Every movement, from lifting a sack to sorting kernels, matters in the cumulative effort to feed millions. Transportation begins at the farm. Grain must reach the nearest port or regional granary. Roads built carefully decades earlier serve this purpose. They are slow but reliable. Cartwheels leave grooves in dirt and stone, evidence of countless previous journeys. Travel is planned. Delays are anticipated. Animals carrying sacks must rest. Drivers understand local terrain. Bridges and ferries are necessary to traverse rivers. Each stage of the journey carries risk. Weather, theft, spoilage. One failure at the start can prevent bread from reaching the city. Arriving in urban warehouses, grain is meticulously weighed and stored. Moisture is monitored. Rats are a constant threat. Workers sweep, inspect, and rotate supplies. Even minor negligence can allow spoilage to accumulate. The Romans understood that storage is itself a technology, requiring planning, design, and vigilance. From warehouses, grain moves to mills. Watermills are the most advanced method, using flowing rivers to turn large stones steadily and with minimal human energy. They require careful construction channels to divert water, wooden gears, precisely dressed millstones. Misalignment or blockage stops the operation entirely. Millers maintain these systems, dressing stones to ensure even grinding and replacing worn components. Animal-powered mills serve as backups but require more labor and are slower. Efficiency is vital because every delay affects the bakeries downstream. Bakeries operate in a synchronized rhythm. Early morning preparation begins hours before sunrise. Dough is mixed and allowed to rise, then shaped and baked. Large ovens consume constant fuel, mostly wood, which must be supplied daily. Bread is baked in batches, carefully timed to match distribution schedules. Loaves must be uniform in weight and texture to maintain fairness, as citizens often rely on state-issued bread as a daily entitlement. Any deviation risks complaints or unrest. Distribution is equally critical. Citizens gather at designated points to receive their rations. Officials measure carefully. Disputes arise over allocation, but the system relies on routine and impartiality. Food scarcity, even minor, can provoke tension or riots. The Roman state treats distribution as a political act as much as a logistical one. Ensuring that people receive what they expect maintains social stability. Beyond urban centers, grain supply supports the military. Legions depend on regular shipments of flour and bread. Marching armies cannot carry enough for long campaigns. Supply convoys follow established roads and rely on local warehouses. Without coordination, soldiers risk hunger and disease, which could compromise military campaigns and in turn the security of the empire itself. Seasonal variability adds further complexity. Droughts, floods, and pests affect harvests unpredictably. The Romans respond with stored reserves, trade networks, and redistribution policies. Surplus in one region offsets scarcity in another. Logistics officers calculate needs carefully, knowing that miscalculation has real consequences for public health and political stability. You notice, however, that all of this depends on human attention. Workers must rise early, remain alert, and follow precise routines. Supervisors must enforce schedules and standards. Transportation relies on horses, carts, and ships behaving predictably. Any lapse can cascade into shortages or delays. Unlike stone roads or aqueducts, grain cannot wait. If mills stop, ovens go cold, and flour sacks sit unused, people go hungry in hours. Even minor disruptions are amplified. A storm delays a ship, slowing delivery from Egypt. A millstone cracks. A baker misjudges timing. These events are small individually, but collectively they demonstrate the fragile choreography of feeding millions. It is a system that operates quietly but must never be ignored. You begin to see the true genius of the Roman approach. They did not merely store and transport food. They created procedures, routines, and contingency plans to ensure continuity. Grain flows not because of grandeur, but because of repeated, meticulous attention at every step. Technology here is as much social as mechanical, yet you also sense the shadow of fragility. What happens if labor declines, if political authority falters, if a province suffers repeated crop failures, or if corruption quietly siphons resources? Bread may continue to appear, but reliability diminishes, confidence erodes, and social tension rises. As the day begins and bakers pull loaves from the oven, citizens form their quiet lines. The smell of baking fills the streets. For now, the system works. People eat, they survive. The empire continues, but the fragility remains hidden, embedded in every grain, wheel, and loaf. You follow the daily rhythm of the city as it continues into evening. The smell of fresh bread has faded from the streets, but the work behind it never truly ends. The system that delivers grain, mills it into flour, and bakes it into loaves is a living network, sustained by human effort, attention, and repetition. Its success is quiet, almost invisible, yet its failure can be catastrophic. As you observe the warehouses, you notice that their durability is not merely physical, they are sustained by discipline. Workers rotate stock carefully, inspecting for mold or pests. They adjust layers to maintain airflow. Decisions made during each shift accumulate over time to preserve supply. Every minor choice, from sweeping the floor to rotating sacks, affects the larger network. Mills continue to grind as long as water flows. When machinery falters, millers improvise. Stones are dressed, gears repaired, and wooden components replaced. If water is low, animal power compensates. This redundancy is essential. A single failure can disrupt the flow of flour to bakeries, and a bakery without flour is a city without routine. Bakeries operate on precise schedules. Morning dough must rise in time for midday distribution. Fuel is managed to prevent ovens from cooling. Loaves are counted, weighed, and arranged. Bakers maintain consistency because citizens expect it. One misstep can lead to complaints or worse, panic if shortages occur. Distribution remains the final, delicate stage. Grain rations and bread, are handed out daily. Officials weigh, measure, and record allocations. Lines form naturally, and people follow their routine because it is reliable. Yet, if mismanagement occurs, public trust falters. Food becomes not only nourishment, but a measure of governmental authority and social stability. Military demands overlay these urban systems. Legions require consistent supply for campaigns. Ships carrying grain are escorted. Roads and bridges are prioritized for supply convoys. Food is not merely sustenance, it is strategy. A delay in delivery can weaken a frontier or allow unrest to fester in the city. Seasonal variation continues to test the system. Harvests fail in one province. Storms disrupt shipping. The empire adapts with reserves, redistribution, and rationing. Yet each adaptation carries a hidden cost. Human labor is taxed more heavily, and trust in the system is tested. Citizens notice shortages, even if temporary. Political stability depends on the resilience of these routines. In rural areas, small farms maintain simpler systems. Grain is harvested, stored, and ground locally. These communities survive on redundancy and proximity. They are less dependent on distant authority, but they are not immune to larger disruptions. When imperial shipments falter, even villages experience strain. You begin to notice a pattern. The empire survives because technology alone does not carry the burden. Human discipline, predictable routines, and careful observation are equally crucial. Grain flows not just because of mills and carts, but because workers, officials, and bakers follow processes faithfully day after day. Yet, you also sense fragility in these same routines. A disruption at one point, political unrest, labor shortage, shipwreck can ripple across the system. Bread may still appear, but confidence falters. Lines grow longer, people adapt. Survival continues, but with tension. You stand outside a city gate as citizens carry loaves home. The smell is faint, but reassuring. For now, the system works. The empire continues to feed millions reliably. But every loaf, every sack of grain, and every millstone carries a reminder. The stability of an empire is never permanent. It depends on quiet, repeated acts of care, attention, and maintenance that few ever notice. And as night falls, you realize that feeding an empire is as much about patience and human diligence as it is about roads, mills, and ships. The same networks that sustain life today remain invisible, relying on discipline you may take for granted, yet which history shows are essential to civilization itself. You begin this story on a flat plain outside a city, the sun low on the horizon. In the distance, a Roman legion sets up camp. There is no immediate battle, no dramatic confrontation. Yet the scene is alive with quiet, disciplined activity. The power of Rome lies not only in its soldiers' weapons, but in the order that structures their daily life. You are about to witness the technology of routine, a form of engineering that ensures an army survives, travels, and functions efficiently. A Roman military camp, or castra, is more than a temporary shelter. It is a carefully planned layout applied repeatedly across the empire. Engineers and officers follow a standard grid. Streets run straight between blocks of tents. Each block, or contubernium, houses 8 men in a single tent. Officers occupy designated quarters. Commanders have slightly larger tents near the center. Central roads connect gates, markets, and communal spaces. Everything is positioned for functionality. The first stage is choosing the site. Ideally, the location is flat, elevated, and defensible. Soil must drain well to prevent standing water. Proximity to water sources, roads, and foraging areas is assessed. Surveyors measure distances and gradients. Trees and brush are cleared. Stakes mark boundaries. Planning ensures that even the first night of arrival provides security and organization. Once the site is selected, soldiers begin to dig ditches and erect ramparts. A defensive ditch surrounds the camp. Earth removed from the ditch forms a low embankment or palisade. This slows potential attackers and delineates boundaries. The physical labor is tedious, repetitive, and heavy, yet it must be precise. Uneven ditches or gaps in palisades compromise safety. Within the camp, streets are laid out with discipline. Each tent has an assigned location. Roads are maintained to prevent muddiness. Drainage channels are carved to carry rainwater away. Latrines are positioned downstream from water sources, often over shallow trenches. Hygiene is practical. Disease prevention is an uncelebrated form of military technology. You notice that even movement within the camp is regulated. Soldiers march, carry supplies, and perform drills on assigned paths. Noise, Smoke from fires and activity are organized to prevent chaos. Communication relies on signals, standards, and repetition. Everyone knows where to go and when. Water management is crucial. Wells or nearby streams provide drinking water. Water is stored in cisterns if available. Channels carry water to different sections. Bathing is limited but occurs regularly to maintain health. Latrines are cleaned daily. Small tasks like these prevent illness, which can incapacitate a legion faster than a battle. Supply storage is carefully organized. Food is rationed, with grain, salted meat, and preserved vegetables divided according to need. Each unit has responsibility for its share. Spoilage is minimized through rotation. Firewood is stockpiled, tools are stored systematically. The entire camp functions as a microcosm of logistical management. Discipline extends to watchkeeping. Soldiers rotate duty schedules. Gates are manned. Patrols monitor surroundings. Each assignment is repeated in cycles. Routine prevents errors. Everyone is accountable. Even minor deviations can have serious consequences. Engineering is evident everywhere. Bridges or temporary crossings are built for water channels. Roads within the camp are reinforced. Tents are arranged to allow easy evacuation or redeployment. The placement of supplies, officers, and latrines reflects careful planning, not improvisation. Training reinforces these patterns. Soldiers drill in formations, repair ditches, and construct structures daily. Muscle memory complements written orders. The camp becomes an extension of discipline itself. When the legion moves, the same routines are applied in a new location, allowing the army to remain operational immediately upon arrival. You notice how this system reduces uncertainty. Soldiers do not waste energy deciding where to sleep, how to cook, or where to place equipment. Predictable routines free mental bandwidth for strategy and combat readiness. Technology here is invisible. It is organization, applied consistently, reinforced by labor, and maintained by rules. Yet all of this depends on cooperation, attention, and repetition. The camp works only if individuals adhere to routines. Discipline is as essential as weapons, because chaos can destroy an army as quickly as enemy attack. The smallest lapse in maintaining roads, latrines, or supply stores can cascade into disease, fatigue, and disorder. You pause and look at the grid-like layout of tents, ditches, and streets. There is no spectacle, no obvious grandeur. Yet this engineering sustains thousands of men, enabling them to operate far from home for months at a time. It is a quiet triumph of routine, labor, and human organization. And as you consider this moment, you begin to wonder, if such discipline is invisible in daily life, how many people outside the Legion ever notice the infrastructure that allows soldiers to survive and march? And what happens when even a minor breakdown in this meticulous routine occurs far from oversight, in the heart of a hostile territory? You linger in the camp as the day progresses, noticing how much of the Legion's efficiency relies on small, repeated actions rather than dramatic feats of strength. Soldiers move with quiet precision, carrying supplies, repairing structures, or practicing drills. Each action, while seemingly ordinary, contributes to the larger system that keeps the army functional, fed, and ready. The grid of the camp is maintained with vigilance. Streets are swept, drainage channels are cleared, tents are inspected for wear or water damage. Officers make daily rounds, ensuring compliance with layout and cleanliness. Soldiers rotate through these duties as part of their discipline, and the routine becomes a kind of living infrastructure. Without it, the camp would fall into disorder rapidly. Water remains central. Wells must be cleaned and monitored. Streams or cisterns supplying the camp are carefully observed for contamination. Bathing occurs when possible, and small pools are maintained for cleaning clothes and equipment. Hygiene is practical, not luxurious. Preventing disease is more critical than comfort, because illness can incapacitate more men than any enemy force. Food management is equally precise. Grain rations are measured and distributed at set times. Meat, salt, and vegetables are stored carefully to prevent spoilage. Fires are maintained at controlled levels for cooking, preserving fuel, and ensuring that food is prepared efficiently. When necessary, mills or grinding stones are used to produce flour for bread, mirroring urban processes on a smaller scale. Even here, repetition ensures continuity. Soldiers know when and how to collect their rations without confusion. Latrines are located downstream from water sources, designed to minimize contamination. They are cleaned daily. Improper placement or neglect can lead to illness, which spreads quickly in tight quarters. Even minor engineering, like sloped trenches or raised platforms, prevents stagnation and keeps sanitation functional. The camp also functions as a training ground. Soldiers march in formation, rehearse maneuvers, and practice building fortifications. Each activity reinforces muscle memory and coordination. When the legion relocates, tents are struck, ditches dug, and ramparts built following the same standardized blueprint. This repetition allows a new camp to become operational quickly, minimizing vulnerability during transitions. Supplies are organized with care. Tools, weapons, and equipment are catalogued and stored strategically. Units are assigned responsibility for specific items. Loss or misplacement is noted and corrected immediately. Even minor lapses are addressed because small inefficiencies can compound into significant problems over time. Observation and patrols continue day and night. Soldiers are assigned shifts. Gates are manned. Scouts monitor surrounding areas. Signals and alerts are standardized. Everyone understands their role. Communication relies on repetition. Horns, flags, or messengers transmit routine information efficiently. The entire system operates quietly, yet any disruption is immediately noticeable. You notice how these routines reduce uncertainty. Soldiers spend less mental energy on trivial decisions, allowing focus on combat readiness and adaptability. The camp is a microcosm of logistical control. Every tent, trench, and street serves a purpose, and every soldier contributes to sustaining the system. The quiet work, cleaning, maintaining, measuring, and observing, is as essential as drilling with weapons, yet fragility exists. A sudden shortage of labor, illness, or miscommunication can ripple through the camp. Equipment might not be maintained. Food could spoil. Ditches may overflow. Even the most disciplined routine depends on constant attention and participation. As evening falls, the camp settles into a quiet rhythm. Fires burn low. Watchmen patrol. Soldiers clean weapons and prepare for the next day. Tents are organized. The repetition of human effort ensures survival. The legion stands ready, not because of spectacular heroics, but because of continuous, precise labor repeated daily across thousands of men. And as you watch this quiet operation, you begin to wonder if such meticulous discipline is required simply to maintain daily life within a camp. How easily could even the mightiest army falter when facing unforeseen challenges? And what lessons might these silent routines of survival hold for the management of empires themselves? Night falls over the camp, and a different rhythm takes hold. Fires flicker across the rows of tents. Watchmen patrol in measured intervals, calling out the hours. The quiet repetition of labor, inspection, and discipline has created an invisible framework that allows thousands of men to rest safely in a foreign land. It is here, in the silence and routine, that the true strength of the legion becomes apparent. The defensive ditches and palisades, painstakingly constructed earlier in the day, stand as silent guardians. They are simple earth and timber, but their effectiveness lies in precision. Attackers are deterred not by novelty, but by the predictability of obstacles. Soldiers know where to reinforce, where to patrol, and how to respond, because the layout never changes. Standardization is the hidden technology of security. Water continues to flow through wells and channels, feeding small basins for drinking, cleaning, and sanitation. Bathing occurs at intervals, and latrines remain functional, preventing outbreaks of disease. Even in the dark, a quiet hierarchy maintains these essentials. Every soldier knows his duty. Every small act contributes to collective survival. The camp's invisible systems ensure continuity, reducing the chance that chaos will spread even in the absence of immediate leadership. Food is stored with care. Grain sacks are rotated, fires maintained for cooking, and tools organized for tomorrow's work. Soldiers on supply duty check inventories, ensuring that tomorrow's rations will be available without disruption. Minor adjustments are made as needed, from repairing a torn sack to adjusting the flow of water in a system. These seemingly mundane actions preserve the operational readiness of the legion. Training does not cease entirely. Night drills are rare, but preparations for the next day continue. Soldiers clean weapons, inspect armor, and rehearse movements in thought if not in action. Even mental rehearsal strengthens routine. The legion functions as a machine powered by repetition and foresight, where readiness is maintained quietly, almost invisibly. The uniformity of the camp reinforces psychological security. Soldiers know what to expect. Tents remain in the same place, streets in the same pattern, duties in the same rotation. Predictability reduces stress, conserves energy, and allows focus on both immediate survival and strategic operations. This is the power of Roman military organization, a combination of engineering, logistics, and human discipline that operates largely without fanfare. Yet, fragility persists. A sudden storm could flood trenches, disease could strike an unwary unit, food shipments might be delayed, equipment could fail. Each of these disruptions is magnified because the system depends on continuous, careful attention. The Legion thrives only when its routines are maintained consistently across time and space. As you stand outside the camp, listening to the soft murmur of sleeping soldiers, you realize that the might of Rome's legions lies as much in the quiet repetition of mundane tasks as in battle formations or conquest. The empire survives and expands because these invisible technologies, order, discipline, logistics, enable soldiers to operate efficiently far from home. Each tent, trench, and latrine is a testament to human organization and foresight. And as the moon casts shadows over the camp, you begin to wonder how many of the empire's victories depended not on courage or weapons, but on the disciplined routines that ensured its soldiers could survive, move, and fight day after day. And what might this tell us about the hidden systems, both human and technological, that support the rise and stability of civilizations even when no one is watching? You begin this story at the edge of a river, its current steady and unassuming, the kind that could be crossed on foot only with difficulty and risk. Yet here stands a bridge, a silent, enduring structure of stone and timber. It is not grand in design, no ornate carvings or elaborate statues, but its presence alone reshapes life. Romans understood that mobility shapes empire, and the quiet work of bridge building and river management made possible the movement of armies, merchants, and ideas alike. The first step is site selection. Engineers, often called architecti, survey the river carefully. They measure depth, current speed, and seasonal variation. Soil is tested for load-bearing capacity. The width of the river is mapped, identifying potential points for piers or fords. Flood history is recorded if available. Roman engineers rely on empirical observation and repeated measurement, knowing that misjudgment can destroy months of labor. Foundations are critical. Timber piles are driven into riverbeds where soil is soft, and stone footings are constructed where the bed is stable. Mortar, often pozzolana mixed with lime, binds stones together, ensuring resilience against water pressure and erosion. Construction is painstakingly slow. Each block must fit precisely. If a single pier shifts, the entire bridge could fail. The work is tedious, repetitive, and vital. Scaffolding and temporary platforms are built carefully. Workers navigate slippery timbers, carrying heavy stones while balancing against currents. Laborers haul materials from quarries or forests, often kilometers away. Every stone lifted, every beam placed, represents incremental progress toward a structure that will endure for generations. Once the main piers are set, arches are constructed. Wooden centering holds the stones in place as masons lay each block. Precision is key. The keystone at the center locks the arch, distributing weight evenly. Misalignment leads to collapse. Even as the work appears monotonous, placing stone, adjusting mortar, checking alignment, it is a triumph of careful planning and human skill. Roads leading to the bridge are maintained alongside it. Without stable approaches, the bridge cannot function. Gravel, stone slabs, and drainage channels ensure that carts, wagons, and foot traffic reach the crossing safely. Engineers anticipate seasonal flooding and soil erosion, reinforcing embankments and repairing damage before it becomes critical. Bridges are more than structures. They are nodes in a vast network of control. Military units rely on them for rapid redeployment. Grain shipments travel across them to feed cities. Traders carry goods that would otherwise be stranded on either bank. Communication flows along these stone paths. The bridge is a point of convergence, quietly enforcing connectivity across the empire. Maintenance is constant. Timber components rot, stones erode, and mortar cracks. Inspectors monitor conditions, recording necessary repairs. Laborers scrape away moss, replace worn stones, and reinforce arches. Neglect leads to progressive decay, but continuous attention ensures centuries of service. Unlike military campaigns or civic ceremonies, this work is invisible. Its success is measured by absence. No collapse, no accident, uninterrupted passage. You notice how rivers themselves are tamed. Minor dams, embankments, and sluices regulate flow near crossings. Seasonal floods are anticipated and mitigated. Engineering here is subtle, controlling water rather than confronting it. Bridges survive because the river is managed, not because the stone is invincible. Small settlements often grow near bridges. Inns, markets, and warehouses cluster around these vital points. The bridge is not merely a convenience, it shapes settlement patterns, trade routes, and regional economies. Its presence quietly dictates where people live, work, and interact. Even pedestrians and pack animals feel the benefits. A farmer carrying produce to market can cross a river in minutes rather than days. A soldier can march with his unit without waiting for the water to subside. The bridge reduces friction and movement, reshaping daily life in ways few ever acknowledge. Yet the quiet discipline behind it remains mostly unseen. Engineers, laborers, and inspectors ensure longevity. Their knowledge, accumulated over decades, is empirical and practical. Each maintenance routine is repeated carefully, almost ritualistically. The bridge's strength is cumulative. Small, precise actions performed consistently over time. You stand upon the bridge and feel its subtle vibrations as carts pass. You imagine countless travelers who have crossed here over years, some unaware of the centuries of engineering behind the stones beneath their feet. The structure endures because of routine, care, and the foresight of people whose names may never be remembered. And as you watch the river flow beneath, you begin to wonder how much of modern infrastructure owes its existence to such meticulous repetitive labor long ago, and how easily could a seemingly permanent structure fail if the invisible routines of care are neglected over time. You linger on the bridge as the sun climbs higher, observing not only its structure, but the network of routines that ensure it remains functional. A bridge is more than stone and mortar. It is sustained by vigilance, repair, and the quiet discipline of people whose work is often invisible. The survival of the empire relies on such attention as much as on armies or laws. Inspection begins with observation. Engineers and foremen walk the length of the bridge, checking arches, piers, and decking for signs of wear. Small cracks are noted. Loose stones are replaced immediately. Mortar that has begun to crumble is reworked. Moss, algae, and sediment are removed. Tiny problems are corrected before they can cascade into failure. The work is repetitive and meticulous, yet its importance is immense. Laborers carry out repairs under supervision. Timber elements are replaced when rotting sets in. Stones are dressed and repositioned. Channels under arches are cleared to ensure water flows freely. Even minor blockages could undermine foundations over time. Work continues quietly, with no ceremony, and the bridge remains passable while repairs occur. Its users rarely notice anything but the uninterrupted functionality. Water management near the bridge continues simultaneously. Minor dams and embankments guide the river, slowing its current during floods and reducing erosion. Channels and sluices prevent sediment buildup at piers. Engineers anticipate seasonal changes, reinforcing embankments before winter rains. The river is tamed incrementally, piece by piece, rather than conquered suddenly. The bridge's role extends beyond the river. Roads leading to it are maintained daily. Gravel and stone are replaced as needed. Carts, wagons, and marching soldiers rely on stable approaches. A single erosion or pothole could delay shipments of grain, supplies, or troops, demonstrating the interdependence of infrastructure. Small maintenance tasks in one area have cascading effects on the entire network. You notice how bridges shape human activity. Merchants time their travel to cross safely. Villages cluster nearby, their economies dependent on traffic. Inns, warehouses, and markets emerge at strategic points. Soldiers rely on these crossings for rapid deployment, while civilians benefit quietly from connectivity. The bridge is simultaneously military asset, trade route, and social connector. Over time, bridges become part of daily life. Travelers grow accustomed to predictable crossings. Soldiers expect reliable passage. Traders plan logistics around these fixed points. Human routines synchronize with the built environment, and the bridge enforces continuity without imposing force. Yet the system is not invincible. Neglect leads to decay, floods, sediment buildup, and wear erode foundations. Timber rots, mortar cracks, and arches weaken. Inspectors must remain vigilant. Even centuries-old stone can fail without continuous attention. The quiet labor of maintenance is as essential as the initial construction. You reflect on the cumulative effect of repeated, disciplined effort. Each stone replaced, each channel cleared, each embankment reinforced, represents a small investment that multiplies over decades. The bridge survives not because it was built perfectly once, but because it is cared for consistently. Longevity is earned through repetition. As day turns toward evening, you observe travelers crossing without hesitation, unaware of the small acts that sustain their passage. Soldiers march along its length, carts trundle steadily, and merchants guide their animals without pause. The bridge fulfills its functions seamlessly, a testament to human foresight and quiet labor. And as you stand on its arches, watching water slip steadily beneath, you begin to wonder how many of the paths we consider permanent today survive only because countless invisible routines of care have been applied, and how fragile are our own infrastructures if attention falters even briefly. Night settles over the river and the bridge, and the quiet diligence of the day gives way to reflection on what has been built and what must be maintained. The arches, piers and roadway seem eternal under moonlight, yet their endurance depends entirely on routine, labor and vigilance repeated over decades. A bridge is not permanent because it is strong, it is permanent because it is cared for. Inspectors continue their rounds even as activity slows. They measure gaps, tap stones to check stability, and examine mortar. Timber supports are replaced quietly where decay has begun. Channels are cleared of sediment, ensuring that the river's flow does not undermine the foundations. Small adjustments today prevent catastrophic collapse tomorrow. Each action is mundane, yet essential. Laborers and engineers coordinate repairs strategically. Stones removed from one section are shaped and set carefully in another. Mortar is mixed to exact proportions. Wooden scaffolds are inspected before supporting weight. Tasks are divided among teams to minimize disruption to traffic. Passers-by rarely notice the work, but the bridge remains open, a seamless conduit between banks. Water continues its subtle work beneath the arches. Engineers adjust sluices to manage flow. Seasonal fluctuations are anticipated. Floods that might have destroyed an unmaintained bridge are mitigated through foresight and small, repeated interventions. The structure survives not through force, but by controlling the environment around it. Nearby, roads feeding the bridge are maintained, gravel is replenished, drainage channels are cleared, and embankments reinforced. The connection between bridge and land ensures continuous usability. Merchants, soldiers, and citizens all rely on these roads, often without realizing how many hands labor behind the scenes to keep them passable. The bridge influences settlement and commerce. Inns, markets, and warehouses cluster nearby, creating hubs of daily life. Traffic flows predictably, enabling planning for trade, transport, and military movement. Civilization expands quietly around these crossings, not through conquest alone, but through the reliable infrastructure that sustains daily life. Yet fragility persists. The river, though guided, continues to erode. Storms test foundations. Timber and mortar decay. Without constant attention, the bridge could collapse in months, even years after its construction. Longevity is never guaranteed. It is earned by repetition, foresight, and disciplined care. As you stand on the bridge in the moonlight, you see its significance, not in grandeur, but in function. It connects lands, people, and economies. It enables armies to march and traders to prosper. Its continued operation is the product of countless small, precise actions repeated across generations. The bridge is a testament to human organization, planning, and patience. And as the river flows steadily beneath, you begin to wonder how many other structures, roads, aqueducts, granaries, and bridges depend entirely on invisible labor to survive. How many civilizations have faltered, not because of enemies or disasters, but because routine care was neglected, and the quiet engineering that sustained daily life slowly faded from memory. You begin this story on a quiet morning along a Roman road. The stones smooth beneath your feet. There is no army marching, no herald announcing news, yet the road itself hums with invisible activity. It is the silent artery of the empire, carrying armies, merchants, messages, and travelers across vast distances. Without it, the empire would fracture. Yet its strength lies not only in construction but in the quiet, repetitive labor that maintains it. Roman roads are engineered for permanence and efficiency. Surveyors, known as grammati, mark straight lines across miles of varied terrain. Hills are leveled, valleys bridged, and rivers crossed. Roads are layered carefully, a foundation of large stones, a middle layer of crushed rock, and a top layer of compacted gravel or flagstones. Cambering ensures water drains to the sides. This attention to detail reduces wear and maintains usability across seasons. Construction requires immense coordination. Laborers transport stones from quarries. Engineers direct placement. Slopes are cut, embankments formed, roads are built in sections, each segment repeated along the network. The process is tedious, physically demanding, and meticulous, yet it produces a surface capable of carrying wagons, soldiers, and messages with remarkable reliability. Maintenance is continuous. Stones loosen, gravel washes away, and ruts form from repeated traffic. Workers patrol the roads, filling holes, replacing stones, and ensuring drainage channels remain clear. The work is repetitive, often uncelebrated, but it sustains the flow of the empire. Even a minor neglected section can delay supplies or an army, demonstrating how fragile continuity can be without constant attention. Way stations, or mansiones, punctuate these roads. They provide rest, food, and shelter for travelers. Soldiers, couriers, and merchants rely on predictable distances between stations. Inns and stables cluster nearby, forming small hubs of commerce and communication. Their placement is strategic, designed to reinforce the network. Roads, stations, and services together create a living system of movement. Military logistics rely heavily on this infrastructure. Legions travel along paved routes, marching in formation with carts carrying supplies and equipment. Predictable distances allow commanders to plan daily marches. Bridges and culverts along the way prevent delays. Roads are more than convenience. They are strategic tools, enabling rapid deployment and reliable supply. Beyond military use, the roads sustain civilian life. Merchants transport grain, wine, olive oil, and other goods from rural areas to cities. Officials carry tax records and edicts. Couriers deliver messages across provinces. Even common travelers benefit quietly from this network. Mobility shapes economies, communication, and social cohesion. Engineers anticipate wear and natural forces. Roads are slightly raised in the center to shed water. Ditches along the sides prevent flooding. Bridges and fords connect difficult terrain. The empire invests in redundancy. Multiple routes exist to ensure that traffic continues even when a section is damaged. Planning for durability and resilience is as essential as initial construction. You notice the human dimension. Laborers, inspectors, and surveyors repeat the same tasks day after day. Stones are lifted, gravel spread, slopes measured. Each action seems mundane, but it cumulatively produces continuity. Travelers and soldiers rarely notice the effort, yet their safety and efficiency depend on it entirely. Yet fragility persists. Heavy rains wash away sections, landslides block passages. Soldiers, unfamiliar with local conditions, may miscalculate travel times. Corruption or neglect can allow potholes and ruts to multiply. The road, though enduring, is only as reliable as the systems and people maintaining it. You walk further along the stones, and imagine the countless feet, hooves, and wheels that have traversed this path over decades. Each contributes to wear, requiring continuous care. Each also benefits from previous labor, often unnoticed. The road is both an achievement of engineering and a testament to human repetition and discipline. And as you continue down the straight, sunlit path, you begin to wonder how many people, from soldiers to laborers, have ensured the continuity of empire simply by maintaining roads that appear ordinary. And what would happen if these quiet routines of care were interrupted, leaving the empire without its vital arteries? You continue along the road, noticing the layers of labor that keep it functional. The stones themselves are only part of the story. The ongoing human effort preserves its utility. Road maintenance is a continuous cycle of inspection, repair, and adjustment, repeated day after day, season after season. Without this discipline, the flow of armies, goods, and information would halt, threatening both military and civilian stability. Inspectors walk the full length of key routes, looking for uneven surfaces, erosion, and debris. Even small depressions are filled with gravel. Displaced stones are reset. Ditches along the road are cleared of mud and leaves. Water is the greatest enemy. Rainfall, floods, and seasonal runoff weaken foundations if ignored. The Romans understood that vigilance is as important as construction. A mile of road could be ruined by neglect in a single season. Laborers maintain culverts and drainage systems. Small channels divert water from the roadbed to nearby streams, protecting the stone layers from erosion. Wooden or stone culverts beneath crossings are inspected, repaired, and reinforced as needed. Even minor maintenance requires constant attention, because failing drainage threatens the integrity of the entire network. The work is repetitive, monotonous, and often overlooked by travelers, but it is crucial. Bridges along the road receive similar care. Piers are examined for cracks, arches for shifting stones, and abutments for erosion. Timber elements are replaced preemptively, River currents, winter ice, and flood debris constantly test these structures. A bridge may appear solid and permanent, but its endurance depends entirely on repeated, careful intervention. Every stone reset or beam replaced is a small victory against time and nature. Way stations, inns, and stables require daily labor as well. Feed is brought for animals. Floors are swept, walls repaired, and wells maintained. Merchants, soldiers, and couriers rely on these facilities for consistent support. Each station is a node of stability. Without them, the flow of movement would slow, and long-distance travel would become risky. The empire's connective tissue is not only stones and arches, but also these quietly maintained points of rest and resupply. Military logistics are deeply intertwined with these routines. Legions move in formation, relying on road width, gradient, and surface integrity to maintain pace. Supply carts carry grain, equipment, and weaponry, synchronized with marching schedules. Commanders calculate distances, factoring in rest and terrain. Even minor damage to the road can delay an army by hours or days, with consequences for strategic operations. Roads are thus both infrastructure and a silent force multiplier. Merchants and civilians also depend on the system. Grain, wine, olive oil, and other commodities move efficiently because the network is reliable. Officials transmit information quickly along courier systems, knowing they can depend on roads and bridges. Markets function, taxes are collected, and cities remain supplied. The empire thrives quietly through repetition and routine, rather than through spectacle or invention alone. You observe how environmental pressures constantly test the system. Rain, landslides, and animal traffic erode the roadbed. Labor must adapt, anticipating seasonal variations and responding before small problems escalate. Even seemingly permanent routes are fragile without attention. Maintenance, inspection, and repair are as critical as the initial engineering. The human element dominates. Teams of workers follow standardized methods. Stones placed in layers, gravel compacted, slopes checked, drainage verified. Surveyors confirm gradients and alignment. Roads are built for function first. Aesthetics, second. Discipline and repetition ensure that the empire's arteries continue to carry its lifeblood. Soldiers, grain, messages, and commerce across vast distances. And as you continue along the worn stones, you realize that the continuity of Rome itself depends on these unseen acts of care. Roads appear permanent, but they are only as reliable as the people who maintain them daily. You begin to wonder what would happen if attention faltered, even for a short time. How fragile is an empire when its most vital networks rely entirely on repetitive, uncelebrated human labor? Night falls along the Roman road, and the last travelers settle for the evening in nearby way stations. The road appears silent, almost permanent, yet its continuity relies entirely on the repeated attention of countless workers. Stones laid centuries ago continue to guide armies and merchants, but only because human diligence has preserved them day after day, season after season. Inspectors and laborers continue their work quietly. Culverts are cleared, drainage ditches maintained, and potholes filled. Stones that have shifted under wagon wheels are reset. Even minor erosion is corrected before it worsens. The repetitive, meticulous labor is invisible to most travelers, but it is essential to the road's functionality. Without it, the path would deteriorate rapidly, and movement would slow or halt entirely. Bridges along the route are similarly maintained. Arches and piers are inspected, timber replaced, and foundations reinforced. Winter floods, ice, and seasonal storms continually test these structures. The repeated, incremental care prevents catastrophic failures. The structures that appear enduring are in truth the result of constant attention and vigilance. Way stations, stables, and inns are cleaned and supplied. Feed for animals is replenished. Wells are checked. Floors swept. Supplies organized. Each station, seemingly ordinary, is a critical node in a system that enables armies and civilians to traverse hundreds of miles reliably. The network depends on these mundane acts as much as on the stone beneath travelers' feet. Military units march along the road, synchronized with the predictable rhythm of way stations, bridges, and camps. Supply wagons carry provisions and equipment in coordination with marching orders. The discipline that maintains the road mirrors the discipline of the army itself. Small, repeated actions, precise routines, and constant oversight. Logistics become a quiet force multiplier, ensuring that even distant provinces remain accessible and governable. Civilian life also flows along these roads. Grain moves from farms to cities, merchants deliver goods, and officials transmit edicts across provinces. Roads are arteries of commerce and communication. Without maintenance, trade would falter, messages delayed, and empires fractured. The empire's continuity is as dependent on laborers shoveling gravel as on generals planning campaigns. Yet fragility persists. Erosion, landslides, or sudden neglect can compromise even the best-built roads. A few months without attention can turn a reliable route into a treacherous path. The apparent permanence of Rome's infrastructure masks a dependence on disciplined repetition. Each stone, culvert, and embankment is part of a system that thrives only under constant care. As you walk under the moonlight, tracing the straight, worn stones, you understand the quiet genius of Rome. It was not simply conquest or law that sustained the empire, but the invisible work of countless individuals repeating small, necessary actions every day. Roads endure, armies move, and trade flows because of human persistence rather than spectacle or chance. And as you pause to imagine the hundreds of travelers, soldiers, and merchants who have relied on these stones over centuries, you begin to wonder how many empires have risen and fallen because the small, repetitive acts of maintenance went unnoticed, and how much of civilization depends on the invisible labor that keeps essential networks alive even when no one is looking.